Welcome back to the channel, guys. In today's video, this is going to be video one of a mini series, and we're just going to call it saddle hunting. Over the last 7 years, we've been saddle hunting. There's a few things that we've learned. We want to share some of the tips and tricks with you. So today I thought the best way to do it would be just simply start out by introducing you to our saddle setup, and then we'll go more in depth as we continue the series. So let's get to the video. So a good friend of mine that I'm going to start hunting with this year has never hunted out of a saddle, so that's what inspired these videos to begin with. When I started saddle hunting roughly 7 years ago, and I believe this will be my 8th season this year to be hunting with a saddle, I was hunting public property. I was looking for a better option. Instead of carrying heavy tree stands a mile and a half back off into public land, I wanted something a little bit lighter. Back then, you had basically two companies. You had Tethered was getting started into the business, and then there was another company that had been making them, and I don't remember the name of their saddle, but they're named after birds, if that helps you at all. And sorry if you guys are one of those guys, but I'm bad with names. Either way, long story short, I decided, hey, I want to get into this. I want to try it. And everybody was on back order. So the saddle I'm fixing to show you is going to be one that I made myself. I actually made two. The first one, I absolutely did not like it. And I'll go over more details on that when we get into the comfort of saddle hunting in a future video. But today, starting out, we're going to show you my saddle. So this backpack, I keep everything in it. And if you've got a hunting buddy that you go with, the reason I started keeping everything in one backpack, I know a couple of years ago, Justin and I was going to go out and hunt. We got almost where we were headed, and I realized, hey, I don't have half my junk with me. So I keep everything in this bag. And in this bag, you've got the saddle, and then I also keep my knee pads. That's going to be something that's important. And then something that I've never seen a company come out with is hip pads. These hip pads, again, I made myself, and it really helps with what people are describing as hip pinch, saddle soreness, whatever word you want to use. I made these, and it's basically, if any of you guys are coming from mountain bikes and you've ever wore the padded bike shorts underneath your cargo shorts or whatever you're wearing when you're out riding around, this is essentially the same thing. Wear these for a few days when you first start out. That way you can kind of get your body broke into the saddle without a bunch of pain. And then towards the end of the season, I'm not even wearing them anymore, but I use these kind of like anybody else would use bike shorts. Okay, so again, this saddle's not really any different than any of the ones that you're going to see manufactured, other than I made it myself. And this is my version 2. Version 1 didn't turn out too good, and I'll explain that to you in a little bit. But I wear all this out in the field, which I say all this. Basically, it's the hip pads and the knee pads, and then the entire saddle. Okay, for starting out, as you can see, my belt is adjustable. This is just a regular old plastic belt buckle. It doesn't make a whole lot of noise, but this belt, all it does is just hold your saddle on when you're walking to and from the field. The next thing that you're going to notice is my bridge. And this is what you're going to tie your tether to when you get up in the tree. I also want to make a note that if you'll notice, all these little connections that I'm using with my saddle that I built are actually, they came from a mountain climbing store, backcountry. They've got all the mountain climbing ropes and carabiners, but don't go to Walmart thinking that theirs are made for climbing, because in fact, a lot of them will actually say not made for climbing. They're for whatever. Now, my bridge, with it being on these carabiners that do lock, they've got a safety lock on them, and it just rolls up like this, and that keeps it from accidentally coming open while you're up in the tree. But the reason that I've got it set up like this way I don't have to step through my saddle. That's something that you don't hear a lot of people talking about, but this right here, when you can put it on just like a belt and you don't have to step through it. I'm 53 years old, guys, so that just makes life a little bit easier on me. But I leave this connected until I get up in the tree, and I'm ready to hook into my tether. The next little pouch you're going to see over here is twofold. This holds my bow hoist, and it's on top because that'll be one of the last things that I need. Again, as I get to the tree, one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to get my climbing sticks and my platform out and get them ready. And that's why my bow hoist is on top of my tether, because it's going to be the first thing I do to make sure that I don't forget my bow. If you guys have ever crawled up in your tree, got up there and got set and realized your bow's laying on the ground, that's why this is on top. Again, I've got it coated with some of the steel strips or whatever to kind of keep it quiet, and this will hook through the top cam of my bow. It'll hook through the string on your recurve, your longbow, any of that. It's just, and this is one of the cheap junky clips that is not made for mountain climbing. So again, just keeping it simple, this is a just regular old paracord, and as you can see, I've gotten hung up over the years and have had to cut my rope out of the trees or whatever. And so yeah, it's got a bunch of knots in it. There's a lot of good fun stories with this little rope. Next thing that we're going to show you is my lineman's belt. And again, I've got it clipped to a lineman's loop in my saddle. That's what my bow hoist is hooked onto. And again, it's got the safety clip on here on this clasp. So I went with the Ropeman because I made this bridge myself. As you can see, it's not a fancy stitched, it's just a regular old rope. And this is a static line made for climbing. And then I've got the Ropeman one, and that's just a tool that makes it easier when you're trying to suck yourself up to a tree. You can do all this one-handed, and then you can back yourself up essentially one-handed as well. And that's one of the perks to the Ropeman. If you're trying to stay really affordable, there's other options. We'll show you that in the next video as well. But that's going to be the second piece of your kit, is going to be your lineman belt. And then lastly, in this one dump pouch, and everything's put in here in order on purpose, I've got another rope attachment so that when I get up in the top of the tree, as I've still got my lineman belt on and I'm fixing to hook up my tether, I'll go ahead and take my backpack off. This is what I'm going to hang my backpack with. Again, you could get by without using this, but this is just, it's too light not to carry it, and it's convenient for me. And then the next thing that I've got is the little deal to hold my bow. And again, this is just a cheap little Amazon deal. I put the steel strips on it, so that stays in that pouch. As we go on around the back, if you're in an area that you can cut limbs, I've made another little pocket back here to slip my little saw in, but not everywhere can you do that. And then a friend of mine gave me this last year. This is a great place to hook your climbing sticks to, or your platform. And it's 3D printed, it's lightweight, and it's just another good option. Now on the other side and I do have leg straps, guys. That's what this extra strap is. And I'll go ahead and show you that as well. But when you're putting your leg straps in, you want to make sure that you're going underneath this piece and not pinning it down, because this is what your tether's going to attach to. Same thing on this side. Make sure that you're not pinning these deals down. A lot of guys don't even like the leg straps, and a lot of the saddles that they're making, people are just cutting them off. They're not using them. I do not walk into the field with the leg straps on, because it's just more junk to kind of, it feels like you're pulling your pants down when you're walking into the woods. All right, so back up here to the front. This other pocket that I've got over here is where I keep my tether. So after I've got my platform set up, I've got my tether. Again, this is a splice die, and this is something that I made myself as well. And then I've got another Ropeman on this just to make it more adjustable. As you can see, this is a real shiny clip, and I cover it up so that when I'm in the tree, you don't see all that shiny stuff. And that's just something that I made. Again, it's just a real simple little pouch. And this is the same soft material. It's a canvas, but it's soft and it's quiet. That's what I made the saddle out of. And then the next thing that I've got in the bottom of this pouch is going to be another clip in case you get up in the tree and you drop it. Again, that's just for hanging my backpack or any other miscellaneous gear. Okay, so I got that put back up, and essentially your saddle, the components that you've got your saddle, you got a lineman's belt, and then you got a tether. It's just 2 pieces of rope and then your saddle that you're wearing. And then the pouches that I made, they do have a little drawstring on the top so you can kind of keep it tight. And the reason that I mentioned the drawstring, if you're like me and you're carrying these pouches, which are basically an open top pouch, you might consider when you take your tether off, go ahead and latch that to your saddle. I know one year, and I think it was 2 years ago now, I made it back to camp. I hunted in the evening until dark, made it back to camp. The next morning I'm going out to get up early in the morning, and I'm at the tree, and I realize as I'm up the tree, my tether's missing. So I had to climb back down, go hiking where I'd been the day before until I found it. Luckily for me, I did find it. So attaching it to your saddle might save you from either losing your tether and or your lineman rope. So that's something to consider, and just a free tip that you're gonna get today. All right, so I'm gonna tell you some of the pros about hunting out of the saddle. We'll start out with number 1. It's a much lighter system. I can tell you my Lone Wolf stand weighs 21 pounds. My tethered platform that I have, and I was able to get one of them after I made my saddle, I want to say it's 6 pounds. It's not super light, but it's not heavy. But you consider, compared to my Lone Wolf stand, that's 14 pounds less. Now, yes, you are going to have some weight with your saddle, your ropes, and depending on what other kind of connections you're using, if you're bringing a little saw or if you're bringing any of the little tree nippers, anything like that, if you're allowed to do that on whatever land you're hunting, then that's an additional weight. But it's still going to come on considerably less than the actual tree stand. And we're not going to talk about the weight on the sticks, because if you're hunting out of a tree stand or hunting out of a saddle, you're still going to have the weight of the sticks or some other kind of climbing method. So we're not talking about those weights right now, but we will talk about it in a future video. So one of the next things that a lot of people aren't talking about, if you see this small tree right behind me, this is a tree that I could actually climb up in the saddle, because you don't have to have a big tree. You don't have to have a larger tree to hang in your saddle like you would if you was hanging a lock-on stand or even a climber for that matter. So if you're hunting in an area where there's a lot of new growth, that is another perk to the saddle hunting, is you can get into a much smaller tree than what you'd be able to get a climbing tree stand in or a lock-on tree stand like my Lone Wolf. One of the next perks that we're going to talk about is safety. I probably should have listed this one up front, because safety should be paramount no matter what kind of hunting or hunting style you have. But I've got it listed as number 3 because it kind of goes together. But this is probably, guys, I can tell you this much, and I've hunted out of ladder stands, I've hunted out of lock-on stands, I've hunted out of climbing tree stands, you name it, and I feel like this is probably a safer way to get in and out of the tree, because you're attached to the tree from the ground all the way up, whether you're using your lineman's belt or your tether. I feel like that's a big, huge safety deal. And the reason that I'm telling you I believe it's safer, back when I started hunting, when we're talking 40 years ago, I don't know if there was lineman belt. I'm sure that the people that worked for the electric companies knew what they were, but I don't know of any hunters that I personally knew that knew about them. And we were climbing up trees, hanging on, dangling, doing the best you could to hang your stand. Those days are over, because there is so many safety equipment and so many options out there. And I think even today, if you was going to be hunting out of a climber, you could still use a tether and use your climber at the same time. In fact, I've done it. So it is, in my mind, maybe safer, but if you're using the right equipment, it's going to be about the same safetiness on whether you're using a saddle or not. I just feel more comfortable and I feel safer. And it could be something in my mind, and maybe it's a mindset, because like I say, I'm connected to the tree from my very first step up the tree all the way up until I'm standing on my platform. So safety is a big one for me. So to kind of wrap up the three main points as far as three big pros, is it's a lightweight system. I think it's extremely safe. And then also you have the ability to get into some smaller trees that you just wouldn't be able to do with a climbing tree stand specifically. And it would be a pinch to get a lock-on tree or a lock-on tree stand on a tree this small, to whereas this tree would be no problem to hang out of in the saddle. So those are three big perks. Again, the biggest one being the lightweight and being able to go those extra half a mile or mile into the woods. Some of the places that I've hunted, I've hiked as far as 2.5 miles. It was nice being able to wear my saddle and just carry a small platform and the climbing sticks. Next up, we're going to go over the cons. For every rose, there's a thorn. We're going to get into that next. Probably one of the biggest cons that I can think of right off the bat, and we're going to go into how you can address some of these. But I think the biggest con right off the bat is it's not nearly as comfortable as if you're sitting in a really nice, comfortable climbing stand, and or even my lone wolf stand that's got the little padded seat. I think you can sit a lot longer, more comfortably in a tree stand. There are some things that you can do to help with comfort, and we will address them in future videos in this little mini series that we're doing. But comfort is going to probably be one of the biggest negatives, especially being new to saddle hunting. That's going to be your number one complaint probably. The next con to saddle hunting, and it's actually directly related to the comfort, is you're going to find yourself wiggling around a lot more because you're attached to the tree, you're kind of hanging onto the tree using your tether and all that stuff, and you're going to have a lot more motion that could potentially be the thing that the deer see. So that could be something that actually messes up your hunt, is you moving around in the tree, because it's so easy to be swaying and doing things that you're just not going to be doing if you're sitting in a tree with your legs kicked back and your back's pressed up against the tree like in a normal tree stand. So movement is a big con in the saddle, in my opinion. The next con is going to be, in my opinion, is going to be the offside or your weak side shooting ability. If you watch a lot of these videos, you're going to see guys, and we're going to address some of this stuff further on into the video, and I've got some solutions for this as well. But if you're new and all you have is a platform, your ability to spin around on a platform that's only a foot wide so that you can get that offside shot is going to be something that could potentially get you in trouble. I want to follow up with this. I know that I missed a shot opportunity on one of the biggest bucks that I've seen in a long time on public land. Again, he was on my offside, and when I went to raise my bow up and over to try to spin around, I ended up banging my bow into a limb. Now that was my mistake. While we're talking about comfort and how much you may find yourself moving in a saddle versus a tree stand, I do want to say this. My hunting buddy Johnny, again, he's another guy that's been bow hunting for over 40 years. He got all the stuff last year to start saddle hunting, and he sold it all at the end of our 2-week trip, simply because the comfort, and he found himself moving around so much he felt like he was missing out on seeing some deer simply because he was moving way much more than you're going to move in a tree stand or a climbing stand. And then lastly, one of the things that I do want to point out is probably the biggest con right now, especially if you're just starting out into hunting or bow hunting in general, and you're trying to figure out if you want to hunt out of a stand or a saddle or what your options are. I think probably the biggest con right now for the saddle hunting industry is the price point to enter. In our future videos that we're going to be doing, I'm going to be showing you how you can make some of your own gear and save yourself as much as a quarter on your entry fee. Some of the stuff you can't make yourself or probably won't be able to, like the climbing sticks. But if you're talking about climbing sticks, that's something that you'd probably end up buying if you was having to buy a tree stand as well. But guys, with the price of everything and the way our economy is right now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention probably the biggest con to getting into saddle hunting or bow hunting in general right now is the cost of everything. But I'm going to show you in future videos how you can save some money. I'm going to recommend a couple of different companies. I know where you can buy the ropes really affordably. They may not have the spliced eye and they may not look as pretty, but they'll be just as safe. So just to kind of recap, there's definitely some pros. You're going to be a lot lighter, especially if you're making long hikes. And there's quite a few cons in my mind about it. However, I still love my saddle, and it's a tool that I'm going to continue to use because just like any other tool in your toolbox, you don't have one screwdriver that puts every screw in. Just like with deer hunting, I hunt off the ground, I hunt out of tree stands, and I hunt out of saddles. And if I have the option and I'm unsure which direction I'm going to go, or if it's an area that I've maybe scouted on Onyx and I haven't actually had boots on the ground, I'm going to take my saddle in simply because it's light and I can get in almost any size tree. I can get it hung pretty quiet. That's going to wrap up this video. I'm trying to keep it short. We're going to do a deeper dive as we go through this mini series on Saddle Hunting 101. Again, I don't know everything about saddle hunting. I've only been saddle hunting for 7 seasons now. This will be my 8th this year. I know there's still a lot of things I can learn. I'm still making some tweaks. We're going to share them with you. I wanted to keep this video short, kind of give you an introduction, talk about the pros and cons, because you're just not seeing a lot of videos where people are talking about the cons. There's quite a few, there's some major cons to the point that my buddy, Johnny, he's not saddle hunting anymore, but that's a choice that he made. Again, I think it's just another tool in the toolbox. I'd love to hear from you. What are some of your pros as well as cons? Maybe some things that I didn't cover in this video, and maybe some tips that you might want to share. We've got some more videos coming out soon. So if you haven't subscribed, if this is something that interests you, consider subscribing down below so you don't miss our next video. And until next week's video comes out, be sure to check out one of our playlists of videos that we've made especially for you. We've got a lot of bow hunting videos, we've got a lot of archery videos, and guys, we just love the outdoors. I hope that you'll join our little family here on YouTube, and I'd love to hear from you. Comment down below, and until next week's video comes out, I hope you all have a blessed week. And let's get outside and make something happen.